Hey guys.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for clicking play today. We have got a really awesome session prepared for you today because listen, we have spent our careers in nonprofits. We love this space. We're marketers, branders, communicators, but even with those skill sets, we find it so hard to be able to talk to people, your donors and your constituents in all the different ways you want to. And so we've built this class today to help you cut through the noise and have a really simple way to do it all better in less time.
Awesome. And I also think that we love entrepreneurs and we love entrepreneurial mindsets. And there's a lot of commonality between nonprofits and entrepreneurs who are working so hard to hustle it out and take on so many different tasks. And so we're talking about how can we leverage this today in a way that helps you work smarter, not harder for your mission.
So, hey, I'm John. It's good to meet you. I'm the founder of We're for Good. And like I had mentioned, I spent my first 15 years of my career in design and branding, marketing, and then fundraising in a nonprofit. And it just kind of sucks you in, but really created this space because I love the idea of helping all of our missions come together and advance the cause and the good work that you're doing. And so we're all about helping push you and provide you the resources to help you do your job better.
And I'm Becky. I'm the chief resident writer, storyteller, emoter, all things feelings. And yeah, I just spent about almost 20 years. I guess I'm the aging one of the two of us. Spent our careers working exclusively in nonprofits in higher ed and in healthcare. And so we position this today in this way because this is what we've been looking for so many times in our jobs, and we wanted to find a fast way to get you to look at the way you create content and disseminate it out. So we are going to dive in, but first, tell them a little bit about We Are for Good.
So maybe you know us through the We Are for Good podcast. We are coming at you 3 days a week, just providing the inspiration, the stories, the tips and tools to help you take your mission further. We love these conversations we get to be a part of, and so many thousands of people have welcomed us into their cars and their earbuds, and it has been a complete joyride. So if you haven't checked it out, please start with the podcast. We think you'll get so much out of it. I know we do.
Oh, it is the most soul-filling 3 days of my entire life for those 30 to 45 minutes. Yes. So we are just really excited to dive into syndication. So the first thing we want you to do is to stop thinking small. So we're going to throw a lot at you here with syndication, and it is a huge mindset. And so first, we want to define it. What is syndication? Syndication is taking a really solid piece of content, maybe like your impact report or a newsletter, something like that, and finding a way to splice it up into several micro content pieces that you can drip throughout your social media or online strategy. It's just a brilliant move. So how do they start thinking syndication, John?
No, I love it. But before you start getting super overwhelmed, because we're talking about micro content, right? In the first couple of minutes, is like we're really encouraging you to just adopt this syndication mindset. Because yes, maybe this will work for your full content strategy, but just this mindset is stop working for so much for one moment in time and work for something that is going to have so much more of an impact. And we're going to break it down for you. We're kind of geeks about this.
We love it. Sorry. You're going to feel our enthusiasm as we keep moving through this.
Totally.
So think about it this way. We want to create a visual for you because we're very much visual people. So you take that impact report, and the way that we would call this the 1.0 version, the old way that we would do it is you would take that impact report. You may be pouring into that content for maybe even up to 9 months, securing interviews, writing articles, tracking down the impact of giving. And then what do we do once we have written it, designed it, printed it? We really only distribute it in maybe one or two different settings. So it might go into email, it might go in inboxes. You may just print it out and kind of put it in your packet when you go on visits. But we're saying that there could literally be hundreds of content seeds that can be pulled from that document and outlined throughout all of your communication. So instead of one day of sharing that impact report, you're sharing it and having a consistent message dripping throughout all of your communications and communicating with one voice.
And it's like, as Becky's describing that, can you just picture the pie chart? It's like you spend 95% of your time, probably even more, creating the content, perfecting it till it's just right. And then you have this tiny little window of time to push it out, and you just hope and pray that people actually make it to page 28, or whatever you're trying to share. So we want to flip that completely on its head. But before we do that, if you've hung around We Are for Good very long, there's core values that absolutely motivate and inform everything that we do. We're very bound by these because we've seen them to be true in philanthropy and true in life and entrepreneurial efforts as well. And one of them is to play the long game. And this is just the idea that we've got to plant seeds today that we are fully aware are not going to provide a shade tree until 20 years from now. And the same is true with this. We're trying to cultivate so many donors along the path to come into greater relationship with you and to greater love for your mission. And it's not a one and done thing. Very rarely is somebody going to have one moment in time that they fall in love with your mission. It's going to be over a long period of time, just like a relationship. And so we want to create all those impressions in all these different places so that people en masse have a way to get to know you and fall in love with your mission.
And I love that you brought that up because it's really about engagement. And when you think about how you're engaging with your target audiences, and let's be honest, everybody has tons of target audiences down from the very high level to a micro level. And when you think about engaging with them, the way of engagement of old is gone, I would say. Even pre-pandemic, it was gone. We really have to think about how intentional we are with engagement. We're not always asking. We're not always thanking. We always need to be storytelling and keeping that mission at the highest level that we can. And the way to do it is with syndication, and it is so the long game. I mean, my dimple is showing up because I'm like grinning about this whenever I get really excited, because I just think the long game is the way that the nonprofits who are in it for the long haul and want to build community on a massive scale, this is the way you want to implement it. So show them how to do it.
Appreciate my language.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember that little impact report that we talked about. Let's put on the lens of syndication and see how it looks completely different, right? So the same document through the lens of syndication has hundreds of touch points potentially. But in this example, we've provided a worksheet for you. There's a worksheet of 5 rows, 5 columns with all these squares, right? Staring at you in the face. What I want you to do is take your impact report and start thumbing through it. And if it's not an impact report, it could be a magazine or a newsletter, an online newsletter, or maybe a website that you really spent some time building out. Wherever you have a lot of content, think about it through that lens, right? And an impact report here has a really great letter from the executive director. And then there's a great photo of somebody that they impacted. And then there's a great story of somebody's life that was changed by it. Maybe even a board list. What I want you to think about is, what if each of those pieces of content was given its own moment to have the spotlight? How would you position it differently? And how much more leverage would you get out of this impact report if you turned it into 25 strategic touch points? And if you really think about it, the power is kind of through the roof incredible. And it's not that hard to do. So as you get started, think about, on the simplest of terms, what could stand alone and have value of any content that you've created. We're not even talking about creating new content. We're talking about using something that you've already got on the shelf.
Okay. Let's pause, because I want you to talk a little bit about value. Because to me, if you hear nothing throughout this entire class, we want you to think of syndication through the lens of value. What is the value that you are bringing to bear that would necessitate somebody coming on and following you, giving you a like, engaging with you? We need to be showing people that are out in the social world the value that we bring to our specific causes and the way that we're addressing them, the way that we're creating pathways for them to connect with us, to join in on our mission. It could be through giving, it could be through a volunteer activity, it could be coming to an event. But thinking about the value and not just posting to post is really going to be what takes your syndication to the next level. So now what does it look like if we've actually employed this?
So, I mean, one more thought on this, right? With syndication, so you have these boxes of 25. The next thing we would do to challenge you is to print off another copy of this worksheet. Because we
extra
really
credit. Yeah.
Who doesn't love getting extra credit, right? Because just when you think you've got 25 pieces, I would encourage you, again, get out the lens. Is it getting annoying yet? Get out the syndication lens and push yourself a little bit further. There's a way to show value, like what Becky's talking about, at the granular level. Like, I'm going to pull out one example, the board list. Sure, you could have a post that says, thanks to our, 2020 board of directors, and put that on to have a moment. Or why couldn't you look that through the lens of syndication? Why wouldn't you feature all of your board members tell their stories over the next 20 posts? I mean, something small as a board list could turn into the power of 20 different impressions, 20 different spheres of influence. They could see it, they could get tagged and reshared.
Oh, my mind is geeking out over that.
That alone, right, is how you need to think differently. And it really doesn't take much effort. It's just looking at things differently. So in this example that we've just given you, this would easily get you 3 months at least of social content. And I would challenge you to push it even further. And we're going to talk about really how to roll that out as it goes along. But let me give you this other example. So just like what we talked about with the board list, even a story, I think it'd be easy to say, well, the story is going to get its one spotlight in the sun and we're going to post it and then move on. Even with a story. And Becky has a great example of how this is done on Instagram specifically. But you can pull out just quotes. You can pull out photos. You can pull out different ways to look at the story, maybe a stat that could stand alone that's mentioned. And the story itself does not have to be just a one post wonder. It can have multiple impressions. And then Becky's favorite topic.
Oh my gosh, we're going to tell my favorite Instagram story.
Right.
So here's a great example if you want to go see how this is done really well. My favorite storyteller, one of my favorite storytellers is Brandon Stanton. He's the founder of Humans of New York. If you're not following them on Facebook, Instagram, please go follow them. But they're telling really incredible stories of people just walking around in New York City. And so what Brandon does that's really unique to sort of drip what are sometimes just very heavy or moving stories, because again, there are character limits on a lot of these platforms. He starts with chapters. And so he might tell a story about a child walking down the street and we find out he's been wanting to play the trombone. He will drip out a series and say, oh, I love it. When you see the brackets come up, that's when you know you're in for a really good story. But it'll say something like, in parentheses at the very beginning of the post, 1 of 10 or 1 of 6. And immediately my mind goes to the space of, I'm in for a story today. And what do? I keep going back to that site every day to read the chapters and to keep understanding what is actually going to happen. That is a brilliant way to storytell in a way that doesn't have to put the whole story in one post. And I think John gave a great example too of the volunteer and maybe even focusing on your board member. Even a board member post could be several posts. One could be a quote. Why do they give? What is their connection to the organization? We could talk about their pet project. There's so many different bents that you can take with looking at that piece of content, and how you activate someone to engage with that is kind of also the 2.0 version of syndication. So awesome.
So that was wonderful. Before we go any further, I want you to think about this, okay? Like I've said, we're working with content that already exists. If it doesn't exist, then use this framework to build a piece of content that's going to serve you really well. So if you're brand new to the game, you know you want to build content that has high leverage, high ability to be sliced and diced, and to be used in that way. But this is a really important factor that we're really challenging you to do. If you haven't yet released that core content, that impact report or the magazine yet to the world, don't just put it up on your website and be done. Give your donors first access to it. And there's a really key reason to do that, because we're always looking for ways to let our donors feel special, to steward them in a really unique way, to let them have first access to things. This is a really easy way to do that. And when you do that, you can not only thank them, but you can also ask them to support you. Say, hey, we're going to use the next several months to unpack this incredible impact online through our social media channels or through our YouTube. So we would love your support. Every time you share a video, it helps more people see it, or whatever it may be. So use your donors and activate them in this other way by giving them early access, and they will love it.
And I love the visual of being able to see just the ripple as they start to share with their friends, and they find like-minded individuals who are also subscribed to the same ideals that your mission is perpetuating. So this is such an easy hack and so simple, and just a simple thing that you can ask your donors and those closest to you to do as a favor to you. Takes less than 2 minutes, less than a minute maybe. Okay, so let's talk about some benefits. Some key benefits are clearly the free. Let's be honest. Right. Like your CEO your executive director will just be happy that you are willing to embark on something that is massively innovative, will save time. That's your second one. And it's also free. It's really just about looking your workload in a different way. Another pro is that it really does expand your reach and engagement. The beauty of social is that it can go into spaces that we can't go. And it allows us into little groups and cadres of people that we may not be invited yet to come into that group. But if we have an insider that's connected to us that already is a believer in what we're doing and they're subscribed, then they are opening the door for us. And to me, it's no different, John, than when I'm a major gift officer and I ask my volunteer to open a door to a new prospect. 100%. It's exactly the same thing. It also just helps you to get more out of your content. When we talk about using an impact report one time, that is such a waste to me. When I think about what could be distracting someone during the time that drops, you could have hit somebody on a heavy junk mail day and just been thrown into the trash can. We don't want that to happen. We want your good content to be seen over and over again. And it also just allows you to keep refining your mission, tweaking it over and over and seeing what your audience wants. And I really think it can just set a new trajectory for the way that you communicate.
I completely agree. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but just the ability to analyze how people engage with different things is completely put on steroids because you've got all this content that's happening in different forums. And so you'll learn so much in doing this and stepping through this process. So the natural question is, where do you start? And I feel you're overwhelmed through the screen. So I'm going to try to
we got you, don't worry.
Into this.
Resources are coming.
But we're going to dive into each of these pieces. But just to give you a roadmap of where we're headed, you always want to start with a goal. You always want to audit and figure out, what do you have to leverage? What channels do you have access to? What kind of content do you have access to? And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you can customize your tone and make sure that you're presenting yourself in a way that makes yourself the most engaging. Mostly you got to get organized, and then you just literally have to go. So let's break it down.
Okay, so we're starting with goals. And the thing that I want you to think about with goals is you really need to have a two-prong approach on this. You need to have a qualitative goal. You need to have a quantitative goal. So, and this is really where the bean counters are going to be asking you for your quantitative goal. And we need to inform them that, again, we're in the long game. We don't expect to see massive donations start coming in through this process because it's going to take a long-form engagement to get somebody listening, aware, following, even commenting, sharing, sure, and then giving, volunteering, all of those things. So start with your goals and think about, what do we want to achieve with this group? Are we trying to get volunteers, for a hybrid event that we have? Are we trying to just get people to broaden our reach and see, we need some new people coming in. Maybe they're millennials. We're going to try to target millennials with this. Think about your goal through the lens of, how does it fit into your business strategy, and how does content play into that? I also would encourage you to look at your communications timeline and your stewardship timeline. Plot that into those 25 squares. We want to make sure that we're not just storytelling all the time. We do want to be thinking. We do want to be sharing things that are coming up, campaigns that are important and timely. So start with your goal through the lens of that communications plan, that stewardship plan, and your business plan for the year.
Okay, so once you get your goals locked in, you really want to look at what channels for distribution do you have. And, a really great goal, and we've heard this from some of the experts we've had on the podcast, is just simply to get people to come to your website, because you can keep working to refine your website. It's easy to track analytics, and it's easy to control, different pieces to see what's going to convert better and what's going to get people to maybe give you their email address or to make a first-time gift. So really making the website your hub of this is a very, very smart proposition. It's the one site that we can control, as opposed to a social media page that the algorithms could be changing all the time. So your website is definitely the core place of distribution, and it's where everything should point back to in any kind of post. But look at your Facebook account, look at your page there, look at your Instagram page, look at your Twitter, whatever forums that you find community or want to build community. look there and figure out what kind of engagement's already happening. There's a lot of analytics in each of these platforms to tell you what kind of posts are getting better engagement. Definitely a ton of third-party tools that can help you do that. But, part of what we're trying to coach you to do is not only to figure out how to slice up the content that's going to serve you in this syndication format, but also to play to the strengths of the platform. Something that's going to be on LinkedIn, you want to have a little bit more of a professional edge. That board example that we gave you, that would play like wildfire on LinkedIn, right? Yeah. Or on Facebook, where there's people with personal connections and want to see what their friends are up to. So play to the platform strengths, but you only know that if you spend time really analyzing all the places you could go.
And I just want to make sure that nobody missed how big the email button was on that screen, because email is so critical. That is your golden list of how you can engage with someone. I mean, we can know a lot of information about someone in the social scene, but until we get that currency of connection with them through their email, I mean, there's the potential that they could disappear off of our radar forever. So people delete their social accounts all the time. We can't take for granted that these social accounts will always exist and that our content will be there. So be sure that you are grabbing that email and making it a key portion of this content.
I wanted you to share about that, Becky, because you just did such a good job.
Thank you. That was really nice. Okay, so we have put this slide together, and I love it because when we first started building this workshop, it was really about how do we think differently about our content. And when I saw this slide, I was like, oh, there are a couple things that I wouldn't have thought of to put in there. An event script, maybe a keynote address. I mean, podcast, we are here for that, clearly. Yeah, we are drinking the podcast Kool-Aid, and we think that could be a great avenue for you. But look at your content through the lens of what's already created. We're not trying to get you to create a ton of new content. You don't have time for that. And so how do we leverage that existing content smartly and parcel it out in ways that are meaningful in the spaces that it's posted?
Totally. And if you are in the position that you need to create new content, when you've got this framework in your mind, you're going to design things differently. You're going to make sure if you get the video, just upload it and get a transcription online so you can easily scan for quotes and things like that. There's going to be hacks if you're creating with this mindset in mind. If you follow the entrepreneurial mindsets, Gary Vaynerchuk, we got to give a pledge to him.
We love Gary V.
He's a great guy, great, brilliant mind. This is really his formula that we have applied in the nonprofit space, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But the whole idea is taking content and figuring out how to continually refine it and distribute it in mass whenever you don't have the time to just keep creating new content. And so these are the overall steps, and then we want to walk you through each one with some detail of how to do it. But document is just all about starting with really high quality core content. I'm talking about actually investing your time there. Everything is not about always, doing the fastest possible thing. This is actually where I would encourage you to spend the most time, because you want something that's high value, that's really well done, that would be a great cornerstone to point back to. So definitely don't rush this step, but find the best possible stories, find the best possible stats and way to present those, because you're going to get so much more running ground from that it's going to be worth the investment of time. I took all of the points for probably talking about document.
Probably not. No, it's great. Keep going.
But create. I mean, this is where you're going to actually begin to slice and dice it. We'll get into this in a second. Distribute is obviously pushing it out to the different channels, especially those social platforms. And then we're going to listen. We're going to spend a lot of time listening and watching, because it's going to tell us what to do next. And we're going to simply repeat. So the formula is not too crazy, especially when you start to think about it through your own lens.
Okay, so I do have something actually to say on document. So, I mean, I think we have driven the point home that a really high quality piece of content is going to be where you're going to be able to get the most bang from your buck. So again, if you're creating that, it's really changing your mindset to think differently about how you're going to go and acquire that information. I think of an example like if you're going to go interview a scholarship recipient at a university for something for your newsletter, don't just go and interview them. Take your phone, get a photo while you're there, maybe get some audio or some video of what's going on. There are so many applications that can be used even to just tease the fact that the interview is happening on your social social channels. So just think about all the different ways when you go and procure this information, or when you're writing or interviewing, think about the different ways and lenses that we can filter the content through all of those, and ask us extra questions.
Right? Even if it's not for the piece you have in mind, like ask the question while you have the person captive, right?
Absolutely. And get to those feeling questions where people really have their heart on display, because those are the ones that will play so well in social, or maybe even just a shocking stat. So sometimes it happens.
Okay. I know we've said this once, but we're going to keep beating this drum as often as we can. The goal here is not to add noise, but to add value. So this starts with how you document the stories you choose to tell, the pieces of content that you go to create. From a value perspective, when we teach people how to pitch themselves to get onto a podcast, which we think is actually a phenomenal idea to help share your story and content that you can use and slice and dice a lot of different ways, we talk all about where can you deliver value, because you wouldn't want to show up at a party and not have anything important to say, right? That you wouldn't want to have a value in the conversation. You want to bring value. So everywhere you're going, think about it that way. And sorry, we're going to keep beating that drum.
You'll probably hear it 3 more times.
So here we are on creating. This is when you take that really wonderful piece of content, that scholarship interview that Becky just went on, and we're going to turn that into a micro content plan. If you went ahead and recorded the audio and the video, even if you're starting off really low budget and you're just setting up your iPhone, why not, right? Because in today's world, especially on the social media space, people love just raw video. They want authenticity. And so that's part of the story is you're sitting across from a student in the cafeteria at the university. It makes total sense that it would be really low budget looking. So it's a great way to just get a lot of good content. Now, it's taking these pieces and turning them into smaller shareable pieces of content. So think images, memes, stats, GIFs, anything that you want to test in the market. And you know your audience, you know your goals. So then you just want to be able to start testing some different things. We talk about, everything that you want to do. You want to just try things creatively. This is a great way to pull somebody in that maybe hasn't done this their whole career, but they can bring a fresh set of eyes into the scenario, and you're going to be able to put your best content forward.
And I feel like you just teased the next slide so well without even knowing that it was coming. This is the place we want you to squat. Totally. Try some stuff. This is like a famous quote of my father's. Like, just get a little bit of risk capital, even if it's just not, and I don't actually mean resources. I mean, get some permission to just try some things from your leadership, because we don't know what's going to resonate with our audience if this is not a mindset that you have tried yet. And so put some things down. Brainstorm as a group. This is a great way for everybody in the organization to pour into how we are going to engage. This is not a frontline fundraiser task. This is not an annual giving task. This impacts all of us. And so we really need everyone speaking into how we can have a collective voice as an organization, and we can just be able to dream a little bit about what's new for the organization to attempt this year. So I love the idea of just trying stuff.
Why not?
So let's get into the third component, this is 3A. So 3A is to schedule. And this is really about how do you leverage that content to match your goals. So, again, we've already teased this a little bit. How are you overlaying this content with what's playing out in your communications timeline, in your stewardship strategy? You may have a Giving Tuesday strategy that's coming up. How does your social post play into all of that? And not just on Giving Tuesday. We should be teasing that for weeks leading up to that Giving Tuesday. Should have a strategy that goes right into year end, and having a plan like this is really going to help you move in that space just a little bit easier. So block out your important dates and events. You may have employee giving at one time of year. You may have United Way giving that kind of blocks you out from soliciting for certain different groups at certain times of the year. Direct mail, whatever it is, block that out and know that that is going to become a component of your narrative on these social platforms. And then we just want to use that content to just keep lifting up these strategies that are already at top of mind. It's really not that hard once you figure out what your content is and how to put it into bite-sized pieces. And then it's just figuring out that cadence of when are we going to unpack it, where are we going to unpack it, and how are we going to contour the message to fit that audience.
Remember, we just said try stuff. So don't overthink this, but just try stuff, and you're going to figure it out as you go. So you've got everything scheduled. You followed Becky's plan. It's perfect. So now you're wanting to really get it out across all of the platforms. So you want to post your content with links back to the website. Remember the slide where the website becomes the core at every place that you're at online? This is where it's really important because every post really does need to go back to your website. That's where we can control traffic, or that's where we can at least control conversions and try different things. So you want to get people there. This is when you also want to start thinking about, how do I play to different platforms that we're on? So again, we've already contoured that board post to LinkedIn. It's going to be a little more buttoned up. If it was on Instagram, I would absolutely lead in with something completely different and make it a lot more fun and conversational than I would on the professional platform. Or maybe mix it up and try something unprofessional on the LinkedIn platform, because maybe that will lift to the surface.
Throw that spaghetti at the window. Right? We don't know what is going to stick.
Absolutely.
It could work. Okay, so step 4 is listen. And this could be one of the most important steps. And we hear this so often on the podcast, especially from philanthropists. They want us to listen more. Totally. Talk less, listen more. That is very Hamilton. Yeah, it is a quote from Hamilton. Yeah. And it's a quote from some of our guests as well. But really, we're just trying to figure out what has resonance. What is getting people to come back? How are they engaging with us? As a public relations professional, I would always try to make guesses about what the audience would do when we would drop things. Always humbled. Every focus group, they never said exactly what I thought they would. So don't assume you know exactly what your audience is thinking or what they want to see. That's why that component, again, of trying things is so important. And it's not just about posting. It's about connecting. If you have someone that speaks into your post, respond to that. In fact, if you respond, it's going to kick up your algorithm a little bit more because you have an activity on there. So find ways to engage, continue that conversation, even take it offline. Look at your analytics. We just had a great episode with Adrienne Owen Jones, who is this amazing analyst out of LSU. And she is saying the data is so important to informing where you need to go next, how you're doing now and where we're going next. Don't forget about looking at your analytics and using that to pivot. And again, just start those conversations and be responsive. This can't be something where you post at 8 a.m. and then you don't go back again until 8 a.m. the next day. We want to show people that we are, totally. We don't want to ghost any of our followers. So we want to be intentional. We want to show that we are in this space. We are believers in mental health and balance in life. So we don't want you living on your phone or your device, but figure out a way to kind of share that responsibility and stay engaged with that conversation. And my favorite one, don't hyperanalyze the moment. Chris Fox was one of our first episodes we ever had, and he had such a good hack. I thought that applies to this, which is if you have spent more than 15 minutes trying to write your social post, you are overthinking it. So put something down, try it out, see what works. And then we're just here to really listen and look for the trends and the themes that are bubbling up from all of these conversations and these posts. And that honestly will kind of populate that spreadsheet for you the next month, maybe the next week.
Okay, I love that, because when you don't micromanage, it's going to force you to look at the trends, and that's where we need to stay. Because guys, we talked about the long game, and that's what step 5 is. It's about repeating. Because listen, our folks need us to be consistent in their life. If we're going to carve out a place in their philanthropy, in their personal philanthropy, they're going to give to charities that they trust. And who do you trust? It's the people that have showed up consistently in your life over a long period of time, right? And so this is what this is all about. It's delivering value, not noise, consistently. And we're going to figure out what engages with people, what connects with people, and just do more of it. We don't need to overcomplicate it. But, we've talked a lot about fitting this around the core strategies of your office. This strategy today is not the takeover of all of your appeals. This is to give you cadence for all the communication in between your appeals. But if you do this right and you're really spending time analyzing and being consistent, by the time your year-end appeal rolls around, you are going to have so much data and so much confidence in the type of content that resonates with your audience, with your donors and prospective donors, that you're going to know the exact type of buildup that you need to create to have the most successful appeal. You're going to know that it is a fuzzy photo with a quote, with a stat, you're going to know exactly what it looks like, and you can back into it so much better. So as you repeat, you can start to become creating better content, and you can start integrating that with your calls to action. Obviously, we've talked a lot about just communicating and just about sharing the good work of your organization. But as you start to get traction, why not pair that with a call to action? Why not ask them, hey, just DM us if you want more information about how to volunteer, or come to this page to learn more to sign up for our emails. You can start to integrate that into the posts that are really driving a lot of engagement.
And just so everyone's aware, CTAs are call to actions. I didn't know that before that. But I also think the thing that I love the most about the repeat step is that even what you had planned may be shelved for a bit, because some of your posts could create their own microburst of content. And so you can just see the ripple that just keeps going. Totally. And so being able to pivot and adapt is really going to help you shine in this avenue. Okay, I'm ready.
This is just like a lot of theory being thrown at you?
No longer.
It's not theory, okay?
We're going to show you application right now.
We're going to walk you through how we do this and just creating the content here. If you don't know much about We Are For Good, we've put out the 3-day-a-week podcast now in our 6th month. Becky and I predominantly do consulting throughout the week. We have a producer, Julie, who helps coordinate the show and does a lot of the behind the scenes. However, there is nobody on our team dedicated to social media, to writing content, to doing all of that legwork. We do this in literally the spare moments of the day, and it seems a lot more probably cohesive than what it actually is.
Yeah, so you don't see our hair on fire in the background, but it's there, I promise. But syndication mindset will help you not lose your marbles as you're trying to figure this out.
Okay, so how we do it is you have to view your website as your hub. We've talked about this a few different times, so I'm not going to camp out there, but think about that as where you're putting your highest value piece of content that everything is going to be pointing back to. Okay. When we go into an interview with a podcast, it is like sacred ground. We have got these incredible guests. We have Kishana Palmer on the screen here. She is dynamite, right? She does not have a lot of time for us, but she has given us an hour of her day that we want to maximize as much as possible. So you bet we show up with our videos, with our audios, with taking all the notes that we can take and trying to get the most possible content, asking her every possible question we can in that hour time slot that we've got. Just with that hour, we're able to create not only immediate teaser content on all of our social media channels, that's just by simply taking a photo. Have you thought to do that at every one of your board meetings or every time you go on a corporate donor ask? Obviously, you need to ask permission for that, but what a great way to just show the different partners that are engaged in the community. Each of these interviews that were an hour long get transcribed into show notes, and those turn into quotes, into stats, into clips that are video, that are audio, that are all the different channels. And then literally we just turn those into a proliferation of touch points. So what was just an hour of time of content gets distilled down and divided into probably 20 different touch points per episode.
And it strings, I feel like, over and spans over several days. And that is the amazing part. Something like LinkedIn that has such staying power. I think this Kishana piece, people were talking about it for, I'm still getting, I'm still getting little updates on it. And I love that we picked this one because anecdotally, the power was out and we are in my upstairs living room. And you could probably see a Barbie dream house or something in the back there. So keeping it real and being human. But again, it's not the most polished picture.
Right.
Yeah. And it still works and it shows how we're engaging in the spaces that we are. Love this.
Okay, so those 20 touch points, that 1 hour turned into 20 touch points, turned into this. Look at this, the amount of tweets.
Don't be overwhelmed.
Instagram post and Facebook post. Now I want you to think for a second, if we had just recorded the episode and put it onto a podcast platform, maybe we would get several hundred downloads within the first couple of days. Maybe we get to 1,000 downloads in the first couple of days. But if you add up all of the impact of all the impressions that happen from that hour post, it's 10x what we would have gotten if we would have just dropped the episode. Not to mention, not everybody has an hour of their day to go listen to the full episode. Some people just need a tweet, and that is going to bury in their mind that we've built confidence with them, that we're consistent, that they know they can look to us for advice or tips, the same on all of the platforms. So by doing this, we added all these opportunities to engage with our future listeners and current listeners and push them to the main piece of content, which was the full episode on our website.
And this is my favorite part. And that is just what we can control.
Yep.
That does not take into account what Kashana and her team are doing on their end. So again, we have taken what is our pond, the We Are for Good pond, and we've just added an entirely new pond. These are, again, like-minded individuals. We're all working in that nonprofit sector. We're working with leaders. We're working on, in this instance, DEI conversation. And so all of a sudden, our world gets bigger and bigger the more that we amplify this among each of our guests. And that is what I love watching, is that, in this example, Kashana can post something on her LinkedIn account, somebody within her group, goes and listens, and then they repost and give a testimonial with it. I mean, that's just the power of what can happen when you are posting really high quality content in a smart way that gets someone's attention and asks them to engage with you.
And why you need to partner with people who have influential networks. So the currency of today is not just giving $1. It's also, who do people have access to and have a tribe of believers that follow them online? Because having Kashana and her platform behind this introduces us to an entirely new audience. And that could be true with whoever you work with in your area.
Yeah, and I actually just kind of want to give an example there for everyone about how this would apply to them when they don't have a podcast. I mean, you could be an organization that does that is providing pediatric cancer services, and so your audience, whether you may just be a local organization, there are millions of people around the world who have a passion for pediatric cancer. It's stories, it's groundbreaking research, what's happening in the space. You need to think about, where are those ponds of people who find that information? How can you partner with those organizations, with those companies, with those labs, with those researchers? How can you share their content? By making friends in those spaces, you've done exactly what we've done here with Kashana, and you've done it very smartly, and it just feels nice and human. And I think that is the last point I want to drive home about syndication is you will thrive in a syndication space if you can be vulnerable, if you can be authentic, if you can be sincere in how you relate to people. Please, all of those adjectives and adverbs and emojis that your administrators have told you to put in a drawer and to stay to the corporate communication robot voice. It is time, baby, to bring those back out of the drawer, because they play so well on social. And again, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, and it is one of our core values. We want to simplify, humanize, and tell a really incredible story. And this is such a brilliant way to do that. And we've got to be able to grab that voice and go into these ponds. Sorry, I guess I'm going with this pond analogy.
Love it.
And find ways that we can kind of pull communities together. We don't want to have our own community. The world is too big. We need to be moving in different spaces of where our our donors, our followers are, and we want them to see that we are just as much an integral part as the biggest players in the business.
Okay, so you ready to get started? Because you totally need to be. I know you've got content ready, but listen, we're here to help. We have gone to work and we have put together some worksheets to get you started. So that grid document that's going to help you think through how to break up an existing piece of content or craft a new piece of content into micro pieces of content that you can share. That's a worksheet that's available for download just right below this video. And then we're also going to give you a checklist of some different things to help you get started and to get organized around implementing this wherever you may work, because I do think everybody can find value in this and everybody can get started on this like today. Like, you don't need to wait. You've got content and you have got the platforms available to you that are free. So literally leverage these resources.
Okay, so I want to get on my soapbox here just a little bit, because John, you know how I feel about conferences, you know how I feel about workshops. And I think just the way that they're limiting is that it's really hard to understand application and how you understand really great. You go to a conference seminar, you really appreciate it, but it's like, how do I implement that? And so that is why we just wanted to take an entirely different approach to the way that we deliver workshops. And I really encourage you to go and get the handouts, because John is an incredible designer. He's got got a great penchant for making things look really clean that are complicated. This will literally walk you through how to implement these steps because we want this to be actionable for you. We want you to thrive as you're trying to unpack this to your leadership and to your organization. So hopefully these templates will get you there. All right, stepping off my soapbox, please go ahead.
That's very kind. But truly, the core ethos of our company, and I said this from the beginning, is that we really do want to be here for you. We literally love this space and we love helping you do more for your mission. So I want to walk you through a couple of ways that we do that just every day of the week and invite you to join us. We love this space and we wanted to create a place for you to hang out, which is what the We Are for Good community is. Launching very, very soon is our own exclusive app experience where it's like a social network just for people who love fundraising and who love in nonprofits doing more and learning more and growing together. It's a place to meet new friends and stay inspired, and it is going to be completely free. Like, this is what we are so passionate about, is bringing together communities in this space. For those of you that want to go another step further, to really level up with us, this year we're so excited to launch something called We Are for Good Pro. And this is the place where we have locked arms with some of the brightest minds, the most innovative people in our industry, to walk through workshops just like what you experienced today in a really actionable place. They're going to be beautifully designed. They're going to be easy and fun to listen to. But at the end of the day, you're going to get a roadmap of how to implement those workshops. And so it's a really powerful place. It's almost like a Netflix for education, if you can imagine that.
I was literally just thinking that because, you know, for us, I mean, if you think about the community, that is very much a Facebook for fundraisers, except our community is caring, sharing, loving, and not derisive, hopefully.
Not spammy.
Right. So you could come in there and pitch things to the community, problems that you're having, ideas that you're looking for, and you'll get a community of people that are like-minded, know exactly what you're talking about, and they'll lift you up. But really, the Good Pro, it is your Netflix to go and get incredible training to be a next level fundraiser or professional in this space. So if you like the topic of this conversation, if you enjoyed this workshop, we're going to be upping the ante and trying to make them as robust and exciting and entertaining and helpful for you as possible.
So come engage with us. You can sign up by virtue of joining this workshop. You're now part of the Good community, so you're going to see emails from us, and there's going to be ways for you to get involved. But we are so glad you're here. Please reach out to us. We'd love to connect with you in the community. Come find us. Let's connect, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for being here.